I think entrepreneurs today don't take enough time to think. I think that reflection is something that's becoming a thing of the past. I think that boredom no longer exists because in every idle moment, people are reaching for their phones. And I think that entrepreneurs need to realize how important their time is and that they can make better use of their time by sharpening the saw, so to speak.
Welcome back to the Outsourcing and Scaling Show. My guest today is Brad Dantonio. Brad, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing great. I'm excited to talk to you. For those of you that don't know, Brad is 38 years old, lives in Houston, Texas, and he retired in 2015 at the age of 34. That's right, he was retired. He's now traveling the world with his new bride. Congratulations. And in 2003, he began creating multiple income streams, which enabled him to buy his freedom from mandatory work after 12 years in the workforce. He has the Man Overseas blog and podcast, which I've been on, and it's a project born out of the desire to share what he's learned and write about self-development, real estate investing, and other life lessons gleaned through the years of study and observation. His other retirement gig is the one-on-one FIRE coaching, only Monday afternoons for those who wish to achieve financial independence, primarily through real estate investing. He's also a free up client. Brad, how you doing today?
Man, I couldn't be better. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Doing great. I'm excited to talk to you. We're going to go through all of that. But first, I want to take a gigantic step back. I know you were in the workforce, but even before that, what were you like growing up? Were you a rebel? Were you a straight A student? Did you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur at some point?
1991, it was the day that Magic Johnson retired from basketball. That's why I remember the day. My dad walked in and said that he was leaving. And it came as a shock to us because I never saw my parents fight or anything. But he moved out of state and started a new family. And at that point, I knew he wasn't coming back. And my mom was not well. And I did some things that I wouldn't have done had I not gone through that difficult period. And to give you an example, my first experience with entrepreneurship was buying boxes of basketball cards. I would save the money that my grandma and my aunts gave me, and I would buy a box of basketball cards for $40, and I would take the packs to school and sell them for $2 a pack, and there were 36 packs in a box. So I would make $32 on each box, which is like an 80% return, and I'm only 13 years old at this point, and I would just reinvest the money. And it took a lot of discipline to not open the packs because I wanted the good cards that were in there too. That's why I got into it, because I like basketball cards. So that was my first experience. And then when I got into with business, and then when I got into high school, my best friend and I started a business where we would sell keg cups at the high school parties. And we would make a killing doing that and then reinvest it into the keg for the next weekend. So yeah, I was a bit of a rebel. It's funny you ask. And then after college, I went into a commission-only job. So there was an entrepreneurial streak there too.
Yeah, I feel like the commission-only jobs, I mean, that's what separates the men from the boys, so to speak. I mean, that's when you kind of figure out whether you can make it. And a lot of times that leads into being an entrepreneur. What did you learn at that job?
I learned how to effectively manage my time. So I got hyper efficient and learned to maximize each hour of the day. I was a guy that would wake up in the morning and brush my teeth while I was using the restroom. I mean, it was from the minute I woke up trying to increase productivity, and I was a freak about budgets at that age to where I would write every expense down because as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to effectively manage money and especially your personal household budget. So my income started doubling while my expenses stayed low. I mean, I didn't go much higher in terms of lifestyle than what I was living as a college kid. So that enabled me to save and invest in other ways. That's how I created multiple streams of income. So I learned all sorts of things from that first experience that I was able to carry into other jobs and businesses as I got older.
I love it. And you did that one job for 12 years, or did you jump around?
I was working in real estate full time for about 4 years, and I didn't know what day of the week it was because I was working so much. And this tends to be a common theme in sales. People who are selling real estate think that people in pharmaceuticals are making more money, and people in pharmaceuticals think that people in software are making more money.
Right.
So I was chasing money at the same time that I wanted to know what day of the week it was. And I found out that people in software worked Monday through Friday. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I can make just as much money working in software and only work 5 days a week. And then I decided I'm too high energy for just one job. I'm used to balancing. So I played college baseball. I was used to balancing baseball and school. And what I did was retained my real estate license while working this W-2 job in software, and then took all of the commissions from both jobs and invested them in real estate. And once I got into software, I was in technology. And so I had access to not insider information, but I could see what businesses were using to operate. And
Right.
so I would make little investments in things like that. And ultimately, it's those little investments of both time and money that enabled me to buy all of the time wealth that I have now.
Awesome. So you retired by 34. You had multiple income streams. How many different income streams are we talking?
Well, it depends on how you want to look at it. I still allow all of my equity investments to grow on the side while living off of passive real estate income. So not many in terms of, I guess you would count. Are you talking passive income streams? Because I had different sources of earned income, but in terms of the passive income, all of that was just compounding on the side because I was so focused on getting my earned income up.
Just the overall structure. I mean, you set it up with multiple revenue streams. You're able to retire. I'm sure the people listening are thinking, how can I set up something similar if I want to? If you could just walk us through that how you structured it.
Yeah. Well, there were books that really impacted me when I got out of college. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Richest Man in Babylon, and The Millionaire Mind, and The Millionaire Next Door. And all these books sort of informed how I went about building income streams and disciplining myself with money. So I would take all of my commissions and put them into a high interest savings account, because by this time you could search online to find the highest interest rate. And then I would dump the money into real estate. So I would pay cash. Like I was buying between 2007 and 2013. I bought about exactly five rental properties in cash, because that time period coincided with the downturn in the housing, in the economy and in the housing market. And so houses that were selling for like $140,000 in 2005, in 2010 were selling for about $65,000 or $70,000.
Right.
And so as my income went up, I didn't increase my lifestyle. I didn't suffer from lifestyle inflation to where I could take that money and invest it into real estate. And then I wasn't even spending all of my salary. So I was able to invest a little bit more money into technology investments. So that paid dividends and interest, but it's not like I would spend that money. I would just reinvest it. So it's kind of tough to say how many income streams I had, but the primary income stream that led to my financial freedom was the real estate investments, those 5 properties that I paid cash for that led to my financial independence, retire early.
It kind of reminds me of Mr. Money Mustache. I don't know if you've seen his blog online, but that's kind of what he preaches, diversifying the money, but also just not increasing the lifestyle and figuring out a way to retire early just by saving. So was it you? Did you have a partner? Did you build a team? Did you walk us through the structure there?
No, it was all me. So since I retained my real estate license, I was able to set myself up in the multiple listing service to receive properties when they hit the market. And no, I tried to get partners like in 2009, 2010. I would go to my software colleagues and say, hey, do you want to put 40 grand in to go half on a house with me? This is how much income it will provide, about $400 net. And, people aren't long-term thinkers or weren't the way that I was. I mean, I thought these are properties that I'm going to hold for 60 years and pass to my heirs someday. Meanwhile, they're trying to make profits in a year or two, or, a 10% guaranteed income stream isn't good enough for them. They want the 20 and the 30%. And then the other people that I would ask had Louis Vuitton bags and stuff, and they didn't have the money available to be able to invest $40,000. So I would just save as much money as I could and invest it and have to go it alone because I really couldn't find partners.
I love it. So what are you using for virtual assistants now? I mentioned before you're a free up client. Give people an idea of what tasks you're giving them.
Well, it's a great question. So my wife and I are in Prague right now. And just a few days ago, I said to her that I needed to work on show notes from my own podcast, but that if she wanted to go and see the castle, she could go do that because she hadn't seen Prague Castle yet. And she said, well, why don't you give it to your virtual assistant? And so I was able to do that. And it was the first time that I had completely outsourced the task, and it freed us up to do it freed us up for 6 hours to be able to do what it is that we wanted to do, which is just enjoy the beautiful day in Prague.
Awesome. So you're using them for your podcast. Tell the audience a little bit more about your podcast. I mean, you asked me before this, why did I start the podcast? How's it going? As someone that's been doing it for a little while, I'd love to hear what was your mentality behind it?
I was a guest on a podcast called Bigger Pockets, which has, I don't know, maybe 100 million downloads or something. And as a result of that guest appearance, I was inundated with questions. And so I decided instead of replying to each one, I would scale the answers by starting a podcast. So that's what started it. And the theme is what you said in my introduction, just kind of the pursuit of financial independence by investing primarily in yourself. And we deviate from that a little bit and talk about relationships and, just other things that I find interesting. I'm a big reader. I read a ton of books. So there's always stuff to talk about, especially, I have travel stories that I tell. But yeah, it just helps people to get to the next level, because I feel like what I've been able to do in this life has been somewhat uncanny. I've been to 54 countries since I quote unquote retired in 2015, and I want others to experience this too. So I'm actually in Prague right now to tour groups around Central and Eastern Europe. So that's another, someone with the fire inside to achieve extreme early retirement isn't going to be content to sit on a beach all day. So one of the things that I do is tour groups around Central and Eastern Europe. So that's why we're here. We're living in Prague and Vienna for a couple of months, and then we'll move on to Thailand in October. But yeah, my wife and I we travel full time.
You mentioned you read a lot of books. I'm sure you've read some business books on hiring. Is there any books on hiring that you would recommend, or any lessons that you've learned that other people listening can apply?
I would say any books on emotional intelligence are really good. I think that's an underrated aspect of business, where you can, if you have the capacity to not only control your own emotions, but influence others' emotions, that is really important, because you're always trying to create the optimal solution. When I was in sales, we're basically problem solvers and educators. And if you're able to relate to someone, you're going to be more effective in doing that. So I know Daniel Goleman wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, and there's since been an Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So I would start there.
I love it. So now that you're quote unquote retired, I know one of your goals is to travel the world. You've got the podcast, or you've got the real estate on the side. What's next? Is there any other projects that you're working on?
Well, I don't have that much time. I have the blog, the podcast. I have the personal coaching that I do on Mondays, which also came as a result of people just asking questions. And I thought, I've got to put a premium on my time. So on Monday afternoons, I will charge people to do one-on-one consulting or coaching. And I coach them to achieve financial independence primarily through real estate investing. So in terms of goals. I was on a podcast called Fire Drill recently, and they asked me, what is your wildest dream? And I said that my wildest dream is, I told my wife that since I was not going to go back to a W-2 job, which I had a sizable income because I was one of the top salespeople. And, they say that like 20% of, how does it go? 20% of your sales force is going to bring in 80% of the revenue or whatever. So when you can hack it, you can make a lot of money, but you have to be able to face rejection and all of that. Anyway, to answer your question, I told my wife that the biggest consequence of that would be that instead of 5 or 6 kids, we could probably only have 1 or 2. She comes from a huge family. Her mom has 14 siblings. Her dad has 10 or 9. So she wants a big family. And I told her that in a perfect world, my wildest dream would be that she could have as many kids as she wants. And we could have like a traveling nanny and be able to fulfill all of our philanthropic ambitions while building something that extends my influence and impacts more people. Because I feel like at this point in my life, I want to give back because I've been extremely blessed. I told you about the tough time that I went through as a kid. Well, that did something to me. And being able to outsource the way that I'm doing now, where I can outsource a lot of the work in order to accomplish my goals, that enables me to do some incredible things. So like one of my early mentors said, once you get money out of the way, you can do some amazing things with your life. So one of the things that I've been able to do is I have a special place in my heart for kids who are helpless because I've been that helpless kid. And so I went to Africa and taught orphaned kids who were born with HIV. And that's the kind of thing that is like, I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to help the least fortunate kids in the world. Like that's something that on my deathbed, you probably heard like people on their deathbed regret working too much.
Right.
Well, on my deathbed, I'm going to think back through my life and how was I of service to others? Well, to me, like that's like one of the ultimate things that you could do is find the least fortunate people on earth and teach them to read. Like what is more fulfilling than that? So if my days were to end tomorrow, there are some things that I've been able to do which are just amazing. And this world, this cyber economy that we're living in is enabling that, right? Because I can call my girl in the Philippines and say, hey, for the next week, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to be able to fulfill these philanthropic ambitions. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question, I know, but I just, man, you can just structure your affairs nowadays to where you can just live a life that is unprecedented. And so I'm trying to optimize and take full advantage. And thanks to your company and what you offer, I'm able to do that.
I appreciate it. Well, you coach a lot of people. What are the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make?
I think entrepreneurs today don't take enough time to think. I think that reflection is something that's becoming a thing of the past. I think that boredom no longer exists because in every idle moment, people are reaching for their phones. And I think that entrepreneurs need to realize how important their time is and that they can make better use of their time by sharpening the saw, so to speak. And that's just taking time out of your day, scheduling time to think. Some people think better when they're going for a walk. Some people think better when they're in the shower. Some people think better just sitting on the couch. And so I would say, don't feel like you always need to be doing something. Take some time to read, take some time to think. Reading is not Twitter. Reading is sitting down with a book and absorbing its contents so that you can be more effective.
I think that's great advice. So I actually just got back from Croatia, baby bathwater. We were on an island with high-level entrepreneurs, and that I was talking to them. Obviously, I want to learn from them. Most of them are way more successful than I am, and that was my biggest takeaway. They were like, Nate, your calendar's too packed. You got to block off more time for you, more time for reading, for reflection, for brainstorming, and that's kind of what I've been talking with my business partner Connor, who lives in Denver, and I'm going to see next week, and how we can kind of restructure it. So yeah, we're still doing the podcast and the projects and all that stuff, but we also have time to ourselves for that planning and brainstorming. So I think that's great advice. What other advice do you have for the audience? You've done a lot. You're able to retire at a young age. You got a blog, you got a podcast, you do coaching. Is there anything else that we didn't touch upon that you think would bring a lot of value to the audience?
Well, just to add on to what I was saying about reflection, if you take time out to do planning, that will also help, because so many people are not setting goals, and we know how reticular activating systems work, to where once you have something written down, you're going to start noticing things that you didn't notice before, right? Pregnant women see pregnant women everywhere. When you buy a red Ferrari, you start to see red Ferraris everywhere. Not that I would ever buy a Ferrari, but that all is part of goal setting. And whether you're a systems person or a goals person, there's an argument that I see on Twitter all the time between being systems oriented or goals oriented. I was setting major goals when I was 22 and 23. And so I started on December 31st of every year, setting 90 minutes aside and reflecting on the past year, go over who I met, what I learned, how I could harness what I learned and who I met to benefit me for the following year. And that is thinking, planning, reflecting. I don't think people are doing that nowadays. I think we're all, and I'm guilty too, addicted to our phones. And so if I had one piece of advice for your audience, it would be just to take some time out and think about what you want your life to be. Do some planning, do some reflecting, see how you can get better next year than you were this past year.
I love it. Brad, this has been great. Where can people find out more about you, and what are you most excited about for the rest of the year?
Well, I'm most excited about the clients that are coming here, because I'm going to show them Prague and Vienna and Budapest and Bratislava. This is such a beautiful part of the world. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at man_overseas. The other thing I'm excited about is my podcast. It's not that old. It's been around. I've been doing a podcast for maybe less than 6 months, but I've had some big time guests, you being one of them. And it's all people who are doing big things with their life. And I enjoy talking to people who are thinkers that are doing big things with their life and want to be of service to other people.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we meet in person someday.
That sounds good, buddy. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy this content? If so, click like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you great content all about hiring.